If you have a job that you think we ought to talk about on the Hot Point Hot Seat Show, and we'll tell what's wrong with it, the problems that you're having, just write to me in care of Hot Point Hot Seat here at WIP 35 South 9th Street, Philadelphia 7, and we'll arrange to actually put you on the air as a Mr. or a Mrs. X. Tomorrow night, for a special show, I'll see you then, Gene Miller speaking.
CMT on WIP, time, news, temperature.
WIP time, 7:30, news headline. The new Government Civil Rights Division has filed suit accusing officials of Terrell County in Georgia of discriminating against Negroes seeking to vote. Complete news report at 7:44, temperature 76 degrees, humidity 63%. This is Philadelphia, WIP 610, WIP FM.
And now WIP presents Frankly Speaking.
That's the voice of Philadelphia's outstanding newspaper columnist, Frank Brookhouser. WIP brings you Frankly Speaking with Frank Brookhouser Monday through Friday at this time. Now meet Mr. Brookhouser with some words about puzzling switches in Hollywood, a romance note, and a ready-made campaign for the Democrats.
President Eisenhower doesn't realize it yet, but when he made his well-publicized Go Slow speech on integration, he threw the doors open for the anxious Democrats. The word is that the Democrats are now preparing a special campaign in about 10 states where the Negro vote is figured to be most important. That campaign will be based on charges that the Republicans really aren't anxious to do anything about integration, but are only pretending to do something about it. They will quote the president's remark as their evidence. Some of the states where the campaign will be used will be Pennsylvania, New York, Michigan, and California. Philadelphia, some of the local Debs who went to Philadelphia area school with Ingrid Bergman's daughter, Pia, who is now called Jenny, will be interested to learn that she is contemplating marriage. The romance in her life is an Italian lawyer, Anthony Bellignocchi, whom she met when she visited her famous mother in Europe. Hollywood, there are many reasons why Hollywood is said to have lost out to television as a leading show business medium. One of the more frequently quoted reasons is the one about Hollywood not knowing real talent when it is right under the nose of the studio. For instance, one big studio just bought the movie rights to the Pulitzer Prize play, Look Homeward Angel, which Kenny Frings fashioned out of the Thomas Wolfe novel. The leading role in that magnificent play was created by talented Anthony Perkins. Mr. Perkins is also an established movie star, but the studio has decided that he doesn't fit the role. The movie version we now hear will have somebody called Anthony Pine doing that important part, and try to make sense out of that foolish bit of casting. We'll be back in just 60 seconds after this message.
And now, let's turn back the clock.
And now, headlines in the news. Dwight D. Eisenhower, inaugurated president. Elizabeth II, crowned Queen of England. Hillary conquers Mount Everest.
Today's headlines. No, these were the big newsmakers back in 1953. And today, 1953 is back. Yes, 1953 prices are back as your Plymouth dealer turns back the clock in the greatest automobile sale in 5 years. Listen to this. Today, and for a very limited time, you can buy a brand new 1958 Plymouth Plaza two-door sedan with heater and
Directional signals.
dual headlights,
Portion air ride.
electric windshield wipers,
Tubeless tires and...
total contact brakes.
But here's the big news. You get this new 1958 Plymouth with all these features for less than you paid in 1953. If you act now.
You paid $1,871.25 for a 53 Plymouth, but for a limited time, you can buy a new 58 Plymouth for less than $1,871.25. See your local Plymouth dealer now. Now back to Frank Brookhouser with some tips on the political concern in Maine, the bigoted action in the South, a puzzling, quiet investigation, and the drive for Adlai Stevenson.
The big talk around Washington right now is that Adlai Stevenson stands a much better chance of getting his third presidential nomination than he has at any time since his defeat in 1956. The man who has made himself an authority on that opinion is Les Biffle, the former Secretary of the Senate and a well-known Democratic Party workhorse. Biffle reports that the Stevenson people are really starting to turn on the steam now to get their men in the public spotlight and to attract attention to his availability. His trip to Russia and the rest of Europe helped that purpose because it kept him in the news. What the Stevenson forces are counting on more than anything else is the fact that the Democratic race for president is wide open. There are far more Democratic Party possibilities right now than there have been in any presidential election since the 20s. The Stevenson forces believe that there could be so much confusion at the convention and so many favorite sons put up that everyone will finally look for a compromise candidate, and that candidate they figure will be Stevenson. Of course, this is the thinking of the Stevenson followers. Others in the party aren't quite as sold on the idea of running a man after he's been defeated twice. They say that no candidate has ever been successful with that kind of record, and they would prefer to go with a new name on the ballot. Maine. The Republican National Committee is carefully observing the political scene in Maine these days because it privately concedes that for the first time in about 40 years, the Democrats do have a chance of beating the GOP in a Senate race. The Democratic candidate has placed Governor Edward Muskie. His GOP opponent is Senator Frederick Payne, who won a seat in 1952 by a 2-to-1 landslide. But things have changed since 1952. One of the reasons is that Payne frankly admitted that he had received some gifts from Bernard Goldfein, and this doesn't sit easily with the provincial New Englanders. And Muskie's popularity is another threat to the Republicans. Things aren't looking favorable for the GOP in Maine, and the National Committee is frankly worried about that state for the first time in 40 years. Philadelphia. This city was justifiably proud of one of its native daughters, celebrated singer Marian Anderson, when President Eisenhower appointed her a delegate to the United Nations. Apparently, though, this kind of honor isn't viewed with the same kind of enthusiasm in all parts of our famous country. For instance, most southern state newspapers didn't even carry the story for an obvious reason. And one newspaper in Georgia, the Augusta Chronicle, carried the item on the page designated as color news. What a strange form of democracy. Washington, there's a quiet investigation going on concerning some racial propaganda which has been sneaking into the libraries of some of our biggest universities. No one is supposed to be able to give the explanation as to how the stuff landed in the libraries, but the report is that the National Renaissance Party managed to put its bigoted literature on the shelves. Why does there have to be a quiet kind of probe about a thing like that? Are the investigators afraid they'll hurt somebody's precious feelings, perhaps the feelings of the people who belong to that party? If there is an investigation, and there certainly should be one, it should be loud and revealing, so that everyone will know exactly what those people stand for. Broadway, people in show business must be desperate. For instance, Tallulah Bank had a schedule to appear in a new play this season, a play called Crazy October. The show, by the way, will open in Philadelphia. There is no history on the play, and no strong opinion on whether it will really turn out to be a play or just a convenient vehicle for Tallulah. Apparently, the movie people don't particularly care. Burt Lancaster's movie production firm has already offered $250,000 for the rights, which indicates how cheap a value money has in the movie business. We'll be back in just 60 seconds with more items right after this message.
Don't forget the rye bread, don't forget the cheese. Don't forget the cigarettes and honey, please. Don't forget the Ortlieb.
It's the He-Man brew.
That the gals love too.
It's the light, wet champ of premium beer. I won't forget the pretzels, I won't forget the chips. I won't forget the cigarettes with filtered tips. And I won't forget the Ortlieb. It's the He-Man brew.
That the gals love too.
It's the light, wet champ of premium beer.
And don't forget to order Ortlieb.
Yes, order a case tonight in the 16-ounce bottles. Just the right size for two. Two full 8-ounce glasses. Ortlieb's wet beer.